Good morning, everyone. This is an important announcement. Please pay attention. For all of you who have a headset for simultaneous translation, it is very important that the headset is returned every day by 1:30 when the activities in the auditorium finish. Please make sure you return them by 1:30. Thank you very much. Buenos días.
Good
Un
morning.
anuncio
An
importante.
important announcement.
Por favor, presten atención.
Please pay attention.
Todos aquellos que están
Those of you-
utilizando auriculares de traducción simultánea, asegúrense de devolverlos a la 1:30.
By 1:30
Es muy
p.m.
importante
It is
que
very
se devuelvan para la
that you
1:30.
return the headsets every day
Gracias.
by 1:30. Thank you.
tengo los ojos claros y me hice mal.
Bueno, good morning, buenos días. No sé si hay muchas personas que están entrando aún.
I don't know whether there's a lot of people still
Voy
getting in.
diciendo alguna cosa como para que vayáis
I'll be starting now, saying a few
empezando a
things
atender.
so that you can start paying attention.
Hello. Buenos días. Estoy presentando a dos ponentes.
I'm about to
En este
introduce
caso, esta mañana,
two
a primera
speakers.
hora, va a estar Jordi Pigem,
We have
que es
first
quien
of
está
all
ahora en la mesa,
Jordi
que
Pigem,
va a compartir
who's sitting
espacio
at the table,
en el segundo tiempo
who will be
de esta primera hora con Carmen Vázquez.
sharing this space
Les
with
voy a
Carmen
presentar
Vázquez.
cada uno.
I'm going to
¿Para
introduce
quién
you
va a
to
hablar?
both of them.
Primero va a hablar Jordi Pigem.
First, we
después va a
will
hablar
hear from
Carmen
Jordi
Vázquez,
Pigem, then we'll hear from
y después
Carmen
tendremos un
Vázquez,
tiempo
and then
donde
we will have some
ambos van a
time
subir,
where
van a
both
estar aquí,
will
ambos
be
juntos, ambas
on
juntas,
the
y
stage,
van a poder estar para comentarios que queráis hacer, preguntas que
available
queráis
for
hacer.
any comments or questions
Así lo
you
vamos
want to
decidido
raise.
organizar.
That's how we have decided to organize
Así
the
que paso a
first block.
presentar a Jordi Pigem,
Let me introduce
que es doctor en
Jordi
filosofía
Pigem. He
por
holds
la
a
Universidad de
doctorate in
Barcelona.
philosophy from the
¿Le estáis
University of
viendo bien,
Barcelona.
aunque esté en la sombra?
I hope you
en una
can
parte
see
de
him.
sombra?
He's in the shade.
Si le estáis viendo bien, podéis
If you
decir
see
sí.
him, can you raise
Okay.
your thumb?
Te vengo. Es que está más cómodo ahí,
He's more comfortable sitting there.
pero él se va a levantar y va a
But
hablar por
he
todo.
will be standing up and moving around the stage.
Es doctor en filosofía.
So as
por
I
la
said,
Universidad
he
de
has
Barcelona,
a
fue profesor de
PhD
filosofía
in philosophy from the
de la
University of
ciencia,
Barcelona. He was
en
resident
máster
lecturer in the philosophy of
en
science and
holistic
coordinator of the
science,
philosophy module
del
in
Schumann
of the master's degree in
College en Inglaterra.
holistic science at Schumacher College
Ha
in
obtenido
Daltington.
varios
in
premios,
the UK.
bastantes premios por sus trabajos, por sus
He has been the
investigaciones.
recipient of the
Y es autor
Philosophy
de varios
Award of
libros,
the
entre ellos
Institute for
Redescubrimiento,
Catalan Studies. He's also the author
Técnica y
of a number of books,
Totalitarismo,
for example,
Digitalización,
Techniques and
Deshumanización,
Totalitarianism,
Los Límites del Poder
Digitalization, Dehumanization, and the
Global,
Rings of
Hacia la
Global
Tierra,
Power,
Pandemia y Posverdad.
also Pandemics and Post-Truth, Life Consciousness, and the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Un diagnóstico de la situación actual.
He'll share his diagnosis of the current situation. This is what he has agreed to talk about. So, without further ado, you have the floor. And thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation and sharing your knowledge.
Muchas gracias, Cristina.
Thank you very much,
Muchas
Cristina.
gracias a todos los
And
organizadores.
thank you very
¿Me
much
oís
to
bien?
the organizers. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Estamos en un mundo, sí, aquí decíamos vivir en tiempos tempestuosos. Estamos en un mundo
We
muy
mentioned
peculiar.
stormy times. We're going through a very peculiar
Al mismo tiempo
time in a
personalizando
world
los
where
robots.
at the same time we are
robotizando
customizing
a las
robots,
personas.
we're humanizing robots and
Esto es
dehumanizing
algo que
people.
ya intuyó
This
Eric
is
Fromm,
something that was
por
already
ejemplo, en un ensayo
foreseen
en
by
1955
Eric Fromm
que se
in
llama
an essay in 1955
La condición humana actual,
entitled
en el
The
cual
Current
Fromm
Human
nos
Condition,
dice
where Fromm tells us
que de seguir las cosas como están,
that
a principios del siglo XXI, o sea,
if we
ahora,
kept following
cada
the
vez más
course
las personas
we were
serán como
in
robots
at the
que se
beginning of the
dedican a
21st
fabricar otros
century,
robots.
humans
Y
will
que a la
become more
larga, los
robotized
seres humanos,
and will be
Fromm,
involved in
destruirán
manufacturing
todo el mundo
robots.
y se destruirán a sí
Robots
mismos,
will destroy themselves and
serán
will
incapaces
destroy
de
the world
soportar
in the future
el aburrimiento
because they will be
de una vida
unable to
sin
withstand
sentido.
the boredom of
El
life with
aburrimiento
no
de una vida
sense,
sin
no
sentido
meaning.
que Fromm decía hace 70 años,
The boredom
sí
coming
que
from
refleja una
meaningless
cosa
life
de lo que estamos
is a reflection
viviendo
of some
hoy
of
en
the
día.
things we're witnessing
Otro síntoma de lo que
nowadays.
vivimos es una entrevista
Another
de hace
symptom
unos días
of the
en
current
El
situation is
Periódico
an
El País
interview I read
a un intelectual
in El
norteamericano que
País,
se
the
llama
Spanish
Douglas
newspaper, an
Rushkoff,
interview to Douglas Raskoff,
que acaba de
a
publicar en
North
español un
American
libro que se titula La
author,
supervivencia de los más ricos.
The Survival
Este
of
hombre
the
se hizo
Richest.
famoso
This
hace
is a
unos
book
años
that has been
porque
published
le
by this
invitaron a dar
author.
una
He became
conferencia
famous a few
en
years
un
ago
lugar
because
de
he was
lujo
invited
del
to
desierto
deliver a
del
speech
sudoeste de Estados
at a
Unidos.
very luxurious
Imaginaba pues, que se lo
state
pedía un
in the
auditorio
desert in southwestern
millones de
US.
personas. Y cuando llega allá,
When he got there, when he
resulta
got
que
to
es un
the
sitio pequeño.
venue, it happened to be a very small place. There was just a table with 5 people there.
Cada uno de ellos es un millonario
Each one of them was a billionaire,
y no quieren que les explique nada.
and they didn't want him to explain anything to them.
¿Por dónde va a
They
reventar?
just wanted to ask questions about
No si va a reventar
the
o no va a
first
reventar,
point
¿por
of
dónde va a
breakage
reventar
for the world
y cómo pueden escaparse?
and how they could escape
Si es
that.
mejor hacer búnkers,
Whether it would be
intentar ir a
best to
Marte,
build
o ya
bunkers or
directamente
go to
refugiarse
Mars
en el metaverso.
or finding
O
shelter
descargar
in the
su
metaverse
conciencia en
or
sistemas
downloading
digitales para
their
que
awareness,
luego,
that's
pues,
their
50 años
consciousness into
alguien lo
digital
reemplace.
systems so
Todo
that
paso
200 or 300 years from now
el búnker igual
they could
sirve
be
durante unos días,
resuscitated.
lo demás son cosas que no tienen ningún sentido. Pero
Madness,
esto
pure
es lo que le
madness.
pidieron a este hombre,
This is what this
le
man
pagaron una fortuna, le hicieron
got
pagar
a
una
request
cláusula de
for. He
confidencialidad,
signed an NDA,
quiénes eran estos
so we don't know who those 5 billionaires were.
Pero eso refleja que la gente que tiene mucho dinero
And that is a clear reflection of the fact that people that have a lot of money, they're not thinking about how to fix the world, but rather how to escape from the world.
Don't Look Up,
Don't Look Up is a film you may have seen. There is an asteroid coming towards the Earth,
quieren hacer dos cosas.
and billionaires want to do two things.
Provecho económico,
One, seeing whether they can make the most of that, financially speaking, and whether they can escape from the world,
y evidentemente
going to another planet. It is a complete disaster,
técnicamente viable, es
technically
una
unfeasible.
fantasía. Pero refleja un poco
But it is a
dónde-
reflection of
y entonces
where
es
we are,
cierto que
the
la
place where we are.
imaginación cinematográfica contemporánea en estas
Imagination in
décadas
movies
cada vez más
since decades ago
es posible
tells
que
us
los
about
empleados
apocalyptic
les
futures.
fomentar el miedo,
There
pero también es
are
posible
vested
que las cosas
vested
cada vez más
interests
complicadas
in doing fear mongering.
percepción creciente
I'm sure of that,
que se refleja
and there is an increasing uncertainty,
en estas producciones.
and that is
Entonces,
reflected, that is depicted in films.
cuando la mayoría de nosotros nacimos,
When most of us were born, by the way,
los padres
we were expecting, were expected to have a better life than that of our parents, our grandparents, because in principle generations improved. Education was better, culture was better, there was more abundance.
que nuestros hijos
But nowadays we cannot guarantee that our children will have a better life than ourselves.
parecía garantizado hace
It is no longer guaranteed as we saw it guaranteed 30, 40, 50 years ago.
otro síntoma.
Another
El
symptom,
verano pasado,
last year,
una
last summer,
publicación que se llama
a journal
AI Impact,
called
impacto de la
AI
inteligencia
Impact,
artificial,
the impact of
hizo una
artificial
encuesta
intelligence,
a
did a survey,
738 expertos
738 experts in the so-called artificial intelligence. They got a question: do you believe that artificial intelligence may lead to the complete extinction of humankind? Half of them said yes.
puede llevar a la extinción de la humanidad.
Half of them said they would agree with
Que hay
that.
al menos un 10% de posibilidades de que lleve a la extinción de la humanidad.
There is a
Es curioso
significant
para mí que
percentage
estas
of
personas sigan
people that
trabajando en
believe
eso, porque si yo supiera que
in
mi trabajo
that.
puede
The
llevar
funny
a la
thing
muerte
is
de
that
una
they're
persona,
still working
seguramente dejaría el trabajo.
in AI.
Estamos
If
hablando de
I
una persona
had the
que
conclusion that AI would lead to the extinction of humankind, I would stop working in AI.
siguiente avión que vais a tomar
If you were told that in the next airplane you will catch,
considera que puede estallar,
there is a high risk that the airplane could burst into flames, you'll probably not catch that flame.
la mitad de los expertos
This is what we're being told. Half of the experts say that this is
como algo
possible.
que extinguir a toda la
Until now, we had nuclear weapons,
en la historia.
something that never existed in the past. You could have
La humanidad
wars
amenazada.
throughout the planet, but having the whole humankind threatened
También este año
by nuclear weapons, that had never happened in the past.
de Google,
Last year,
Hinton,
the grandfather of Google,
dejó su trabajo
Jeffrey Hinton, quit
y dijo que se arrepiente de lo que ha hecho.
his job, and he
Se
said
arrepiente de haber puesto en marcha todo esto.
he regretted having set this in motion.
Pero claro, es un consuelo.
There's always people that would do this if you don't do it yourself,
También en marzo de este año
but there's no
se hizo muy popular una
consolation.
conferencia que dieron
In March of this year, there was a conference
consideraba el filósofo de Google,
delivered by Tristan Harris, the philosopher at Google, and Nathan Raskin, who had worked for Mozilla,
Centers for
the founders of a Center for Humane Technology.
y dieron una charla,
These two guys delivered the speech
el dilema de la inteligencia
entitled The Dilemma of Artificial Intelligence.
y básicamente explican que estamos
During that speech, they explained
tenido el segundo
that in
contacto de la
2023,
llamada inteligencia
we have had the second contact between the so-called artificial intelligence and humankind. The first contact took place on social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
En ese primer contacto se nos
During
decía
this first
que eso
contact,
iba a hacer que tuviéramos más
we were
relaciones,
told that we would have
menos solos,
more contacts, that we would feel less lonely, we would meet people that think alike.
¿qué es lo que ha pasado?
But at the end of the day, what happened with artificial intelligence and social media? We're paying less attention, we're addicted to screens, we have an overdose of information which is out of context,
Tenemos bots,
we have bots,
entran en los debates,
algorithmic systems that go into
tenemos
debates
polarización de opiniones porque cada uno
to get them into trouble.
piensan como él.
Then people are heavily polarized.
Manipulación de la infancia.
We have a sexualization of childhood.
Manipulación de elecciones.
We have the manipulation of elections. Cambridge Analytica, remember? We have new ways of censorship because YouTube
Que era la plaza pública, el foro,
and all the others
como pasó con el COVID,
seem
te
to
lees
own
lo que estás diciendo, te cancelan. Esto antes no tenía.
public spaces. If they don't like what you publish, they simply delete
Dicen,
what you're sharing. That was the first contact between AI and
nuevas herramientas.
humankind. Now we have the second contact with ChatGPT and other
Si
tools.
antes teníamos lo que se llama deepfake,
Before, we had
por ejemplo,
deep fakes,
una supuesta entrevista,
for
que grabas la
example,
voz
a
de,
so-called interview
Steve Jobs, por ejemplo,
where someone could pretend that there was an interview with Steve Jobs, between Steve Jobs and Joe Rogan, as if it had taken place this year.
si escuchas esa entrevista dices,
If you listen to the interview, you would say, wow, this is Steve Jobs talking about 2022,
de ver que eso es falso.
and there's no way you can prove it is fake. This is called deep fake.
Hemos pasado del deepfake
They say
al fake
we have
everything.
moved from deep fake to fake
Si
everything.
antes teníamos ya esa sexualización de la infancia,
If earlier we had that sexualization of
por
childhood,
ejemplo, este caso que ha habido en Badajoz,
take a look at what happened in
que la
Badajoz,
inteligencia
southwestern
artificial
Spain.
las desnuda,
Little girls
tienen fotos de su cara y su cuerpo vestidas, pero la inteligencia artificial las desnuda y
that
las
are shown
por la
naked
red
by artificial
se
intelligence.
vende para
This is uploaded to social media and it is then sold as child pornography.
hubiera sido absolutamente
Without the advent of these technologies, that would have been impossible. What Harris and Raskin say, or said before this happened,
a un colapso
was that we're going to a complete collapse of trust
de la realidad.
and even a complete collapse of reality.
De estafas múltiples,
And obviously the possibility of scams and fraud.
imitando perfectamente
Someone can call you over the phone
10.000 euros. Esto ha pasado.
pretending to be your daughter and asking for 10,000 euros. A completely fake phone call.
Nos lleva la inteligencia
This is where artificial intelligence is taking us to.
hay esta especie de fascinación colectiva.
There's also this collective fascination about this intelligence,
La inteligencia
and we tend to forget that the real intelligence is ours, and the intelligence that resides in all living beings. By the way, this is not intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not intelligence. If it was intelligence, how come an artificial intelligence can become a real flower? If you see an artificial flower 30 meters away, and you can say it's very pretty, but then you get closer, you smell it, and you know it's plastic. Artificial intelligence, it may look like an intelligence, but if you try to translate a poem, for example, Antonio Machado, the famous Spanish poet, and you ask artificial intelligence to translate that text, Google Translator will give you a disastrous, a really poor poem. The nuances are not there. It doesn't understand what it's doing. It mechanically translates. It can tell you how to get here very quickly, but it doesn't understand properly. And by the way, when I talk to experts in artificial intelligence and I tell them, they say, yeah, we know that intelligence is not intelligent. But public opinion seems to think that this is real intelligence. And this is part of what I call idolizing technology, what I call technology. The new religion is believing in technology with no limits. You have a problem. It may be medical, it may have to do with your mood, with the climate. There will be a technology out there that will resolve it. When you realize that there are secondary effects, a new technology will fix them. But that new technology, in turn, will introduce new problems. Well, a third technology will come into play. So we're getting into a world which is increasingly more chaotic. One thing is to use technology in a sensible manner, and another thing is taking for granted that it will save our lives. So the net result of what is happening with technologies in recent years is missing attention, lack of attention. Films, movies are shorter and shorter because people pay less and less attention. People are finding it increasingly difficult to focus on things, focus on reading a book, focus on a conversation, on admiring something. You go to a painting in a museum, you take a picture and you go away. You don't pay attention. Lack of empathy. This is something that we have seen. Twinge has measured that statistically. Empathy is going down. There are children out there that are raised talking to Alexa instead of talking to their parents or their grandparents. There's even studies that show a decrease in intelligence. We could question, of course, IQ, but the average IQ is going down. We have what we call the Flynn effect. Throughout the 20th century, the average intelligence of human beings went up during the 20th century. But at the end, towards the end of that century, Scandinavian authors started detecting that the average IQ of people started going down. And this is clear for industrialized economies. What goes down is the intelligence of people right at the top, those that are extraordinarily smart. Geniuses, their intelligence is going down. That may be related to a number of factors, climate-related factors, or anything else, but we read less and less. We don't have as many conversations as we had in the past, and we don't use those tools that would lead to developing our own intelligence even further. So as I say, AI is not intelligence to me, but since the acronym is there, what I would propose is to say the invasion of algorithms instead of artificial intelligence, or algorithmic invasion. We are being invaded, our professions are being invaded, our life is being invaded. So everything human is being invaded. And this has to do with the fact that our culture, when the scientific revolution took place 4 centuries ago, where Descartes and Galileo were leading, they said only whatever can be measured is absolutely real. Length, acceleration and weight. But then colors, tastes and flavors, feelings, emotions, pain and displeasure, these are subjective fantasies. If you see someone suffering, and you could tell, can you imagine telling them that you cannot measure their emotions and therefore their emotions are fantasies? Modern science only focuses on what can be measured. For example, the blue color on my coat, on my jacket, is an illusion. It's basically a wavelength of some 450 nanometers. So if you stand up in front of a painting at the El Prado Museum, you're not interested in nanometers, you're interested in the painting. You don't care about nanometers. Velázquez, the painter, knew nothing about nanometers. But there is that trend of using everything quantifiable, or even more so, everything that can be digitalized. What we are witnessing is that there is an entire portion of the human mind where we are being surpassed by these machines, for example, playing chess. But there is a more important part of human life where machines will never be able to replace us. Many authors in the West and in other cultures, philosophers, above all, have told us about the human psyche. One, which is the algorithmic mind, which allows you to calculate things and determine things, how to calculate the time you will need to get here, for example, from your place. And then we have the creative self. This is what tells you, I want to be there at 9:30. One thing is, how do I get to that venue? But then, the desire to be here is a very different story. This is highly correlated with something we have been seeing in recent years in a very different light compared to what we knew about the two hemispheres in the brain. There is a book out there with 1,500 pages, Ian McCris. It shows how the left hemisphere of the brain tends to apply a utilitarian view of the world, whereas the right hemisphere, for some people, because it doesn't happen with everyone, it tries to find out about context. It tries to find about the gestalt. When reading a poem, the algorithmic mind may count the syllables, the number of verses, the type of rhyme, but it is the creative self or the typical behavior of the right hemisphere that understands the poem itself. So we are focusing completely on the algorithmic approach, and the human vision is set aside, is left aside. We really need to go back there. We need to go back to whatever is purely human. Machines will never be able to replace us. Sensibility, intuition. These are things where machines will never be able to replace us. With this algorithmic invasion, AI, we should strive to recover that.
Siglo XX, Jacques Luceyran, no es tan conocido como...
So, we have a youngster's story. When he's 7, the holiday is finished and he starts crying because he has to take the train back to Paris, and his parents don't understand why he's crying. So after 3 weeks, when the ring bells to finish the lessons of school, all the students stand up, run. He staggers and falls, and his glasses break, and he loses both eyes. So he cries because he won't be able to see that garden never again. That's why he's crying. And 3 weeks after, he goes blind, and he will never see that garden again. He had sensed that that will happen. So he leads a normal life. He goes to the same school. When he walks with his peers, he senses there are things that are surrounding him. And at the beginning, when he first was blind, it was full black. But after a few days, he started to sense a light inside. And he felt it every time except for when he was afraid, doubted, or was calculating. Those 3 actions, being afraid, doubting, and calculating, diminish that light. And with that light, he sensed, to my left, I have a tree. There's a mountain, and his friends would confirm. So he had this capacity to use intuition that we cannot explain. When Nazis invaded Paris, he's 16, and he found a resistance group that will have hundreds of youngsters as members, and he is the leader. And he keeps all the telephone numbers in his memory, Not cell phone numbers, of course, back then. So if they gave him, there's no papers, he cannot just be a whistleblower. But with his inner light, when he talks to someone and someone wants to join the resistance group, he has to talk to that person. And by talking to that person, by listening to his voice or her voice, he will know if he's honest and brave or if he or she is a traitor. He ends up in a concentration camp in Buchenwald and ends up being a teacher in the US, and he's still blind. But when they ask him, you being blind, how can you teach if you're blind? And he says, well, for me to teach, I don't need the eyes. Without looking, you sense if people in the room are connected.
Entonces, en el año 72 muere camino de una conferencia que iba a dar en Zúrich.
Conference in Zurich in a car crash. And that conference, we have the text for that conference, and the title is Against the Contamination of, Against the Pollution of the Eye. And he says that back then, at the beginning of the 70s, there was something horrible in the world, which was Vietnam War. We all agree, horrible, right? But he says that there's something even worse, how we are destroying the...
Todavía hay algo que es más terrible, y es cómo estamos destruyendo el yo, cómo estamos destruyendo nuestra vida interior. Y él dice, en 1972, que estamos destruyendo nuestra vida interior porque la radio, la televisión, etcétera, nos están atontando. Pero claro, ¿qué diría ahora cuando casi todo el mundo lleva un móvil en su bolsillo? Yo no tengo, intento resistirme.
So this idea of the pollution of the eye is very relevant when we think about what's happening now. If I had to do a diagnosis, as Cristina was saying, one of the things that's happening is there's the loss of the eye, a loss of presence in the here and now, because we're more distracted, and of full presence when we are with the others. Someone can invite you to a coffee and you're looking at your cell phone. Loss of presence, but also I think we can talk about a loss of the sense of the context, of the relations, of the sense, the meaning.
Si hubiera de ponerle una sola palabra, pérdida de gestalt, porque estamos cada vez más en nuestra burbuja, encapsulados en nuestra burbuja individual. Cuando nace la psicología de la gestalt,
It's a reaction to a series of visions that were mechanicists, and a moment where holistic visions are appearing. And then Max Wertheimer, the main founder of the Gestalt psychology, when he is in the US, he writes an article in 1934 in English titled On Truth, about the truth, in the Journal of Social Search. And he says something that is even more meaningful today. A truth, an objective truth, correct truth, isolated from the context, without its gestalt, in reality is a lie. A truth without a context is a lie. That's what Wertheimer is saying in 1934. And we have come to the post-truth, where it doesn't matter if things are right or wrong, and it doesn't matter, and not only it doesn't matter, but the fact that our civilization has committed to that algorithmic mind has made us make everything as objects that can be traded, exploited, manipulated. Human beings become objects of the system too, but the information becomes also a good, an object. And the current techno-capitalism has as its main source of wealth information. The information becomes a good, but when the information is a good, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It matters if it's going to provide money or not. And that leads to a deep corruption of the world, a corruption of our sense of reality. And the best example is what has happened with the scientific magazines. In the 20th century, what the scientific magazine said was the truth, but in 2005 already, the most downloaded scientific article of the 21st century of Joan Wavidis is titled "Why Most Research Findings Are False." why most research findings are false. So, and that's for medicine mainly. Most of these results are false. In 2015, Richard Horton, the editor of The Lancet, one of the two major medical journals of the world, in his own magazine, he acknowledges that about 50% of what they publish is false. And it's not just someone who's a radical speaking, someone who's against the establishment of the pharma industry. No, it's the editor of The Lancet, who is the editor today, one of the most prestigious journals. And Journal of Medicine also. One of its former directors, Marcia Angel, also has published an article saying that after many years against what she wanted, she realized that what's published is deeply corrupted by the interests of vested interests, for example, pharma companies or companies that sell equipment for hospitals. And in 2021, the British Medical Journal, another very prestigious magazine, Richard Smith, a former manager of this journal, published an article saying that since now on, what you will see in a medical journal published should be considered as false and unproven contrary. Wow. And I insist, this is published in a medical journal of first level, the British Medical Journal 2021. So we cannot just pay attention to what they're telling us, not even scientific magazines. So what can we listen to? We cannot take into account what screens tell us. So we can just listen to, trust the people you have in front of you, listen to your heart and what you feel in the here and now. And at the same time, as all this goes on, the same algorithmic mind has led to the explosion of the financial complexes, and the financial economy is phagocytating democracy, the productive economy, everything. We have investment funds today, such as BlackRock and Bankrupt, that they do move more than $15 trillion, which is more than the GDP of Great Britain, Germany, Italy, France, Russia, and Spain all together. Those two entities, financial entities, they move much more money than all these countries I've just told you. And they are the main shareholders of many, many companies, even rival companies, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So the main shareholders of many banks, and Spanish banks, the main shareholders of the main media. So if you see that some TV channels or newspapers that should be left-wing and right-wing say the same thing, well, maybe there's something behind related to the main shareholder is the same one. And that's not surprising. And that also leads to an increase, a non-stop increase of inequalities. I recall 30, 40 years ago, I was really surprised by the fact that 25% of humankind had as much as the rest of humankind. It's impossible. No, but it's just 1% has got as much as 99%. And then it was that 0.01% has got as much as 99.999%. And that's ever and growing in Spain, in Great Britain, in UK, in US, because these financial groups, they get profits from everywhere, and the rest of people we're just floating as we can. So don't look up that film. If you look up, you will see that there are these financial interests dominating everything. And in this context, when COVID breaks out, all these entities Amazon gets even richer, the most powerful company in the world, because stores.
Claro, está muy bien. Y con sus algoritmos no hay quien compita con ellos. Si al principio nos decían que las redes sociales empoderaban a los pequeños comercios.
All shops, but yes, but much more the big shops. So the small shops are out of the game. So if we had a loss of Gestalt, a series of measures are implemented that are against the presence and the Gestalt, the here and now. Wearing a mask, so you cannot see the smile of the person in front of you. Confinement, lockdown, with the mindset problems that have been triggered. In Spain, for many, many weeks, you could not go out, leave your home. Dogs could go out, but not kids. That is absolutely well, what can I say? And many of these measures were absolutely absurd. For the masks, for example, the most prestigious medicine data gathering institution published a meta-analysis in this year proving that there's no evidence that masks prevent your contagion or causing contagion into others. And they've repeated it again. But these measures were imposed, and you might have seen images of people playing the flute, drilling a hole through the mask. Well, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. So, I'm taking too much time. If we were talking about Don't Look Up, this is kind of a nightmare. A nightmare, and when we started to think about these things, the thing is don't look back and just continue as if nothing had happened. So, apart from don't look up and don't look back, this system invites us to don't look in. So you don't see how you're feeling. So you have a facade of being happy and having many likes. That is what the system is asking for. Don't look in. Because if you look inside, we might see the chaos in the world, because it's the chaos I have in me. The external factors that contribute to that chaos resound in me, in the inner chaos. Because in the end, what moves the world is how we perceive the attitude we have before the world. Our view of the world configurates our beliefs, that configurate our values, that configurate our attitudes, that configure our actions. When your vision of the world changes, your action changes, your behavior changes. And that's why it is so interesting to have different ways to see the world. When Gestalt was born in Germany, in the same country, was born the quantum physics. And the first absolute result for me of quantum physics is that the world is not made of things, of separated billiard balls, but the world is made of relations. Because we cannot even talk with an electron that exists on its own. It is related to the other electrons of the universe. The world is not made out of things, but relations. And that is a different way of understanding life. And quantum physics tells us that there's an essential role of the observer. I mean, in physics experiments, how the experiment is established, but it is extrapolated to the attitude we have before the world, before that experiment. So, Cristina, how much time have I got? Nothing? Well, simply let me summarize after the diagnosis, 3 things I believe stem from this diagnosis. First, we need to cultivate more the presence of the here and now. We need to rediscover or rebuild those gestalts that give a sense to our lives. And the third is we must do our most to make better people and help others be the best people they can. Thank you very much.
Jordi, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Jordi. It was a specific request for him to portray the worst of what we have in order not to stop looking, to know where we are, to be aware of where we are. So thank you so much that you did it so bluntly, Jordi. Thank you. We have a difficulty. I don't know if it's only in this part of the room or in some other parts of the room,
se oye
we
la traducción.
hear the translation.
Se oye la traducción
We can
simultánea.
hear the simultaneous translation,
Muy alto.
and very, very
No
loud.
sé
I
si es
don't know,
porque algo por aquí hay, pero por aquí también dicen
here
que
and
hay,
over there,
por allí también.
and over there.
A nivel técnico,
I don't know
no
if
nos
the
han dado ningún
technicians
resultado,
can
pero es posible
do something, but
que
is it
alguna
possible
persona
that maybe
ponga
the headsets,
el audio
the headsets
demasiado alto.
are too high in their volume?
Si
maybe
os quitáis los
if
auriculares
you
y
take
no
off
bajáis del volumen,
your headsets and you
personas
don't lower
alrededor,
the volume, the people who are surrounding you will be listening in the back the voice of the interpreter. So the only thing we can say is, please, if you're wearing headsets for the translation, please don't have the lower so much high, so do not pump up the volume, because otherwise the people surrounding you will be hearing in the back the voice of the interpreter, and it's not very comfortable in order to be able to follow. So now, Carmen?
Gracias.
creo que es una mujer que conocéis.
She's a woman you all know.
Que está también muy implicada,
She's
está
really
muy implicada durante muchísimos
has
años.
always been involved since long in the European Association and in international associations.
Es psicóloga clínica,
She's a clinical psychologist, Gestalt psychotherapist,
fundadora y directora del
founder of the Centro de Terapia y Psicología CTP in Madrid, and director of that training school. She's got European certificates, international certificates. She's a hard worker. Yes, she's a hard worker. And she's very efficient because she's got a publishing house. Of Gestalt books, the CBT books. And she's translated many books. She's written many books also. She's a member of the scientific committee of different Gestalt magazines and journals. She has translated books in different languages. So I'll leave you with her. And she has prepared a talk about the Gestaltic lecture of that diagnosis that Jordi Pigem has offered. Thank you very much, Carmen. Good morning, everyone. I've lost my voice with the social relations I entailed yesterday, though I should say that maybe after listening to Jordi, I've choked my throat and think that we're not at 90 seconds for the end of the world, but at a click to the end of the world. So maybe instead of talking, what we should do is either have a collective therapy group to get rid of despair, the despair coming from the previous talk, but we're Gestaltics, so we can have a collective suicide and we can do bonfires. But as we are Gestalt therapists, I think that I can offer hope, though I won't say anything new, and you know what hope is. When I was listening to Jordi, he was mainly talking about the macro level, the disasters of the world. If we go to a smaller level, we deep dive from the therapy of every day with a client, we can see that all this terrible world that we have been presented, and which is as it is reflected in patients with depression, with panic attacks, that are discouraged, that are on drugs, the parents that are in despair with their children because they cannot handle them, because they don't know how to be a parent. And that is something I believe that we do see it in our office, in our practice. When Jordi was talking about Gestalt, I was thinking, the figure we all grow up with can be reflected in how the evolution of the world has been, which has to do with how we individually perceive. And an important aspect of our humanity is the possibility of perceiving through the body and the senses we have. So when I teach, one of the things I do is to say that we have to imagine a photo camera of the old ones, not the one with autofocus where you just have to click. And what I say is that if we get out of focus in a camera or a cinema camera, or the old televisions that had antennas, remember? If the antenna was not correctly placed, you would only see a black screen with white lines. So if we defocus a picture camera, you see everything blurred. And that is the beginning of the training of Gestalt. I'm not going to take too long in here because I won't have time, but if we close the objective, each time the figure becomes more specific and more concrete. There has been a time in our history where the figure was concentrated in creating an I and a U. And that was the neurotic world. The social problems we had were problems that had to do with that I-U. I envy you, I'm unhappy. You have rage against me and you want to kill me. I say, I don't know what to do. So every pathology had to do with neurosis. As we are humans and we do creative adjustments at all times, we have even closed that focus even further. And now what we have, such a clear image of the I that the you has disappeared. And that's the narcissist world. That's the world we're living in. I only see myself. And I only see myself, and the rest, even the other people, are things. That makes me losing empathy, losing compassion. I've lost the possibility to help others. Let's say that if I help someone else, I am above it because I'm paying him a favor. If there is another, I will use the other to see if he can recommend me, or he can help me out, or he can give me something. So we've lost solidarity. We've lost, but I think this has to do with our perception. If I go on to try and link afterwards with this, if you know me, you know I love PHG. PHG has a definition which is beautiful for me of what suffering is, what neurosis is. And it says that it's the premature pacification of new things. And this mature pacification of novelties is one of the features of the narcissist world. We don't like surprises, we don't like spontaneity, we don't like presents, we don't like parties, because everything has to be useful, a price, and everything has to be logically organized. This is what Jordi was saying, and that it could be the left side of the brain, the left hemisphere, which is the logical, rational part of the brain, and that it tends to usefulness. I just lost my idea, my track. Oh, yes, neurotics. But if we decompose the basic emotions that have led us to becoming narcissists, there are two that are crystal clear for me: frustration and fear. When I was talking about new things, I normally say, I'm not Antonio Machado or a poet. I'm not Jorge Manrique, that Spanish poet. Any case, life is a river that leads to the sea, which is death. But life, that river, is river with turmoil, with waters that are calm, with sunny days, with rainy days, with waterfalls, with winds. That's life. That is life. And that's make for many of us to like that poem that Greeks hate, the poem of the travel to Ithaca. Our fate, our destination is reaching Ithaca. But that doesn't matter. What counts is the trip, the voyage. And we're so afraid of new things, the stormy days. Am I going to find a waterfall or a cliff? Will I find this or that? And it's like if we were turning the ship away, and instead of going forward, and one of the river bank we have got frustration, and the other river bank we have fear. But the boat continues until it's the end of the river. Well, that's a surprise when we will get to the end of the river. But what happens between frustration and fear? What we try is not to feel that I am frustrated or that I am afraid, because a narcissist cannot feel. So I think that we leave aside something of the most wonderful things we have of human beings, the body. When Jordi was talking about the I creative, I said, well, he forgot the body. So I wrote a long time ago an article titled The Envy of the Angels, because I was saying that when I was little, they explained to me that angels are pure entities without a body that are intelligent, and they've got intelligence and well, like the AI today. But my article of The Envy of Angels is about the feelings and sensations. If you don't have a body, you don't know what it's to smell a flower. If you don't have a body, you don't know what it's to caress the skin. And AI and angels don't know that. Humans, we have got a body, and we have got a body that vibrates. That is why the example that Jordi gave us of that blind boy that becomes a teacher and who could detect mountains and trees and the people surrounding him, it's because he's got a body that vibrates. He had a body that vibrated. In a model, we called it kinesthetic resonance, and it vibrates because of the others. And in fact, our model, you know that it talks about what Jordi was talking about, the electrons that are not on their own, because they're always in contact with another electron, which is the law of Einstein-Rosen, I think. So in a certain way, a body resounds, together another resounds. And the wonder of this Gestalt model, this Gestalt therapy model, is that we are together, sufficiently together and present and involved in that being with the other. These two resonances, these two vibrations, these two music, if I can put it that way, will join, will come in tune, and they will create a melody. And that is living. But in order to have that tuning, so that we can co-create a tune, we need to recover our body, recover the values that the body has, being aware, and that takes us back. And that is leaving narcissism. I don't know if it's got a meaning to become to be neurotic back again, but at least there's an I and a you, allowing us to make an us.
We know in our model that we name everything. We apply names to everything. If I focus on myself, I'm a narcissist, a shitty narcissist, forget my words. If I'm focusing too much on you, I'm lost. If I focus too much on we or us, we are confiding in each other. But that's what our model tells us about flexibility, how important it is. And then time, which is here and now, here and now, here and now, here and now. Our model is the model emotion. Emotion that sings out to life. We don't want any rigid elements in our model. Being stiff, being rigid, has to do with having no motion. It is only when we are dead that we are completely rigid. Sometimes it will be me only, and I will not be paying attention to you because I need to be with myself. Sometimes I will be generous and I will forget about myself to be with you. And it will either be compassion or solidarity. There are so many people doing social work out there, like NGOs, and sometimes it will be us or we. That beautiful feeling, you feel that you are being understood, and not mentally, you are physically understood by someone who is like a sibling, so to say. And it could happen these days at this venue. I think we would need to go back when Jordi said, don't look up, don't look in, don't look out. Look everywhere. There's so many prepositions that I would use there. Look between. Look at whatever is between yourself and the other. That's where life is. And I think that's what we do with our patients. We feel the suffering through our body, and that rebounds within our body. And therefore, our mind, our brain, which seems to be the only important thing nowadays, our brain, makes meaning out of that, out of what is happening. I don't think it is the brain that rules the body and, symbolically speaking, the heart. When I look at your face, and our model is phenomenal, it's based on phenomena, I am moved by what is vibrating within you. And I get the little beeps of my perception. And that tells me I'm feeling compassion, I'm feeling sadness, I'm feeling joy. And all emotions or feelings are with. And I think that in this society we have forgotten about the with, the between. I think Gestalt therapists need to go back to those concepts.
Recuerdo un día hablando con Richard Kittler.
I remember talking to Richard Kittler, one of the first Gestalt practitioners I had the honor to meet. He was still alive at that time. I think he passed away in 2000. One day he said, we may have differences between those that are more individualistic in the way we work, those that are more clearly focused on dialogue, those that are more focused on field theory, but we all have something in common. We are rebels. We're all rebels. We are social rebels. In a world where nothing matters, where there are no principles anymore, there are no rules, there's so much selfishness. The only thing that matters is what I want. If I want to say something to you, I tell you through the phone. Being social means you have principles, you have consistency, means you recover those values that were lost. And I think Gestalt practitioners are very clear about that. There is an anecdote. One day I was waiting at an airport and I saw this couple typing on their mobile phones. And I was thinking, each one with themselves, not with the other. If they're a couple, not too much future for them. And the lady looks up and says, why are you telling me this? I don't agree. They were communicating through the phones.
Ellos sentados uno al lado del otro.
They were sitting next to each other, talking through the phone. Body lost, body forgotten. I don't want to get too long because I would love to get questions from you. There's something I love saying, coming from Laura Pelch. She used to say that she didn't like talking to, she enjoyed talking with. I'm almost blind and I have all the lights on my face. I cannot see your faces. I don't know what you're interested in, so I prefer to be shorter in my talk. And now we will have the Q&A. I'm hoping that you will ask as many questions as you like. In any case, let me finish with two things that are not my own. Okay, let me read them. In the preamble, I hope, well, she said I'd lose my mind, I'd lose my marbles. That would be the equivalent in British English. This comes from the prologue written by Michael Vincent Miller and Isadora Refrom for the first version of PhD. It goes like this. Gestalt therapy doesn't offer healing to all the problems affecting humans, just because this is intrinsic to human nature. It doesn't offer a track to go back through the gates of Eden. But psychoanalysis used to promise it can help you live better in a fallen world. And I think that is our duty. And the second thing that I would like to mention has to do with Gestalt therapy, but it has to do with all of you. This is a quote from a speech delivered by Laura Burge on the 25th anniversary of Gestalt therapy. It goes like this. This is a happy event for all of you, for all of us, because what already started 70 years ago as a daring experiment involving only a bunch of people who were devoted to this, and a small group of people, including students and clients, has now fully grown, consistently developed into a new type of therapy, which is now being taught and practiced, not only in the United States, but also in most of the world. That's the end. Thank you very much indeed for waking up early and coming here to listen to us. I hope you enjoyed this event. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Carmen.
Thank you very much indeed, Carmen. As I was telling you earlier, we now have Q&A. Both of them are sitting at the table. They will respond depending on who you target and who has most things to say.
Más luz.
Sí, estás como Goethe, de luz más luz, y luego se murió. Estás como Goethe, que dijo luz más luz y luego se murió.
Sí.
Así que no lo digas.
Creo que él pidió más luz. Que se estaba muriendo ya y pidió más luz.
Hello, can you talk to me as well?
Pero no se murió.
Sorry.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. I wish to thank you both for really inspiring and also stimulating lecture. And I was thinking how to summarize what you told us. You, Jordi, referred to science fiction movies. And in science fiction movies, the catastrophe appears when robots become like human beings. But in fact, what I heard you saying is that the catastrophe will be if we are becoming robots. So it's the vice versa.
Right. ¿Respondo en español o en inglés?
Should I respond in Spanish or in English? In science fiction films, there are science fiction films where the disaster happens between humans, real humans. But what those films are not telling us, they are distracting us really, they are not telling us the truth. Deep down, what happens is that most people feel less alive and more robotized. There was a demonstration, there's been a few demonstrations. There was a demonstration led by employees at Amazon saying we're not robots, explicitly, because in their work they interact with robots more than with people. There are cameras all over the place that keep them under control because the company has decided about the most effective manner to apply packaging to merchandise. So you first use this hand, you then use this other hand. If you don't do it that way, if you're more spontaneous in your behavior, you can be penalized. You have to follow the rules. So the system is taking us to that robotized world. If humankind continued and reached 10 billion inhabitants with robotized human beings, it would be a disaster, a catastrophe. That's what Aldous Huxley tells us about. A world of distractions. There's not a single second for you to be with yourself. You cannot feel your body, you cannot feel anything because you're always distracted by something else from outside. As Jean-Luc Servan said, we're losing ourselves, we're losing our own presence. That's why the work you do is so important to recover those values. In the meantime, let me take the opportunity to say something which might not be related directly to that. When I hear you speaking about artificial intelligence and the fact that we are becoming more and more robotized, I kept thinking about something. Beyond narcissism, if we close perception even more, what's left? And I realized that we had transhumanism. That's what you said, being half robots. Not just being narcissists. I now have a chip implanted and my memory increases. I use a cyborg-like eye implant.
Y de hecho, yo antes comentaba como el desarrollo de visiones más holísticas del mundo que se da en el primer tercio del siglo XX, la psicología de la Gestalt, la física cuántica, etcétera, fue barrido luego, después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, por visiones mucho más mecanicistas y se ha impuesto la idea de que tú no eres más que tus genes, tu código genético. Harari, este intelectual israelí, que es uno de los portavoces para mí del sistema, pues dice que los organismos no son más que algoritmos y que el ser humano es un algoritmo obsoleto. Cuando dice eso, yo se lo explico en mi último libro, Técnica y Totalitarismo. Que el ser humano sea un algoritmo obsoleto es una redundancia, porque si tú eres un algoritmo, ¿para qué? ¿No? Ya eres obsoleto. Pero eso es un poco lo que se nos está enseñando. La visión de fondo, la visión del mundo, que decía que es tan importante, que se enseña en las escuelas y universidades y en los medios de comunicación, de que aquí somos seres mecánicos y nos hemos de adaptar al gran engranaje, o somos engranajes de un gran mecanismo. Todo lo cual va profundamente en contra de la dignidad de las personas, del sentido de la vida de las personas, etc. O sea que en las últimas décadas hemos desarrollado visiones fantásticas que nos permiten analizar muchas cosas y que a veces son muy prácticas, pero se va imponiendo esa idea de que todo es mecánico. Y en realidad eso es falso, porque, por ejemplo, y si no hay más preguntas, sigo. Mientras estamos aquí sentados, nuestro corazón va latiendo sin que tú le tengas que decir ahora más rápido, ahora más lento. La respiración podrías decir ahora...
You don't have to think about breathing. You breathe.
Está haciendo la digestión de tu desayuno, que es una cosa complejísima, que implica cientos de procesos y que no hay un solo premio Nobel de Química en el mundo que supiera organizar. No hay ningún premio Nobel de Química que sepa organizar la digestión de lo que ha comido. Porque según miles de circunstancias eso se ha de ir variando. Y mientras estamos aquí sentados, tenemos cada uno y cada
sitting here, we have dozens of billions of cells doing things. They are orchestrated, otherwise we will be sick. They're perfectly orchestrated. How about organizing dozens of billions of cells consciously? Each one of those cells is performing chemical reactions which are much more efficient than any chemical reaction you could see at a human factory.
Y en vez de hacer caso de esa inteligencia, que es también la inteligencia del corazón que decías tú, el corazón tiene 40.000 neuronas y envía el corazón más mensajes bioquímicos al cerebro que el cerebro al corazón. Es el único órgano que hace eso. Pues en vez de ser conscientes de ese prodigio que conocemos gracias a la ciencia, pues estamos aquí encantados con las máquinas.
Hello? Hello? Yes. Do you hear me? No. I'm trying to speak, but yeah, I'm on. Yes, hello. My name is Per from Norway. Thank you for addressing a lot of my own concerns. And I was so impressed with Jordi using the concept of Gestalt so much, saying that Gestalt is kind of another alternative to algorithms, another world opens up. And I was curious about, or normally I feel that only Gestalt therapists are talking about this concept, using it, explaining the world through it. So what do you think about the future of this concept, Gestalt? How useful is it?
I think it is useful in that if we are to move in... Oh, sorry. Creo que si tenemos que movernos hacia visiones del mundo mucho más holísticas, que es lo que creo que es esencial en el mundo de hoy, para superar, complementar, pero incluso también superar estas visiones tan analíticas, mecanicistas, reduccionistas que hoy imperan, en estas visiones más holísticas y más vivas, el concepto de Gestalt es muy útil. Y de hecho, hay, por ejemplo, este autor que citaba, Ian McGilchrist, también lo utiliza mucho. Cómo las visiones analíticas, la biología molecular, por ejemplo, analiza los genes de la planta o del animal, pero no ve la Gestalt del animal. O sea que creo que Gestalt es un concepto que aunque ha quedado un poco constreñido a la psicología y a la terapia Gestalt, etc., debería ser más de uso más amplio y podría ayudarnos a hacer el clic para tener hacer el clic es una metáfora demasiado mecánica. Podría ayudarnos, sí, es cierto, intento evitarlas. Podría darnos la chispa, que es una cosa más natural. Podría ayudarnos a despertar a visiones más holísticas. O sea que, sí, preparando esta charla se me ocurría que el problema de nuestro mundo en gran medida es lo que creo que en alemán se podría llamar Gestaltlosigkeit, pérdida de Gestalt. Y por tanto, el concepto creo que puede ser muy, muy útil.
Creo que ahora soy yo la que voy a hacer la pregunta. Vale. Si vale.
Sí, sí.
Porque cuando te oigo Gestalt, creo que no sé a qué te refieres.
Bueno,
a la capacidad de hacer figuras.
Sí, yo entiendo que la psicología de la Gestalt, con Wertheimer, Kafka, Keller, etc., una de las cosas que pone énfasis es que la percepción siempre va por conjuntos, no va por las cosas separadas. Y entonces lo que estoy diciendo es que hemos perdido esa visión del conjunto y nos fijamos en los detallitos, ¿no? Entonces, seguramente lo refiero más a la idea originaria psicológica que no quizá a la aplicación en terapia. Pero ese es el concepto originario. Laura Perls había estudiado con Wertheimer.
Era psicóloga de la Gestalt.
Sí, pero también Wertheimer había sido su maestro, creo, en Alemania.
Sí, a ver, ella trabajaba en un laboratorio de Gestalt con Gelb.
Sí. Con Gelb, sí.
Sí, a lo que voy, no es que quiero pillarte en un renuncio, querido. Quiero ver si lo puedes equiparar al concepto de campo.
Claro,
entendido como todo lo que va, que pertenece a un todo, por decirlo de alguna manera.
El concepto de campo, si lo puedo llevar al tema de la física, que tú también ibas por ahí en cierto momento, sabéis que la luz se manifiesta como partícula o como onda. Y que desde Newton habíamos intentado conceber el mundo como objetos hasta que en el siglo XIX surge el concepto de campo, field. Eso es algo que pone contexto, permite ver las cosas mucho más en su conjunto. Pero creo que tenemos que dejar espacio para otras preguntas que veo manos alzadas por ahí. No mucho.
Hola.
¿Sí?
Aquí. A mí me gustaría, bueno, no sé si es una pregunta exactamente, me gustaría hacérsela a Carmen. Me ha servido mucho cómo has empezado tu intervención hablando de la desesperanza que ha evocado con todas sus reflexiones Jordi. Creo que aún estoy un poco temblando porque antes de llegar a ese nivel de profundidad o tener el dato de que el 50% de expertos piensan que va a llevar a la extinción, no sé, ya sentía terror con el tema de las inteligencias artificiales. Y después de las dos ponencias es como que sí que me da algo, un ápice de esperanza esta perspectiva gestáltica y ese centrarnos en las relaciones, pero ver el devenir del mundo a nivel macro, o sea, no sé cómo tener esperanza viendo eso. No sé si se entiende la pregunta.
Bastante afrancesada y cojo el eslogan de la Revolución Francesa de la libertad, igualdad y fraternidad. Digo que a nivel macro, a nivel mundial, se ha explorado el modelo libertad como el modelo capitalista, que ya vemos cómo va, abajo. La igualdad como el modelo comunista, y ese se fue a la mierda hace mucho, y nos queda explorar el modelo de la fraternidad, que sería el modelo de las relaciones. Y ese parece que somos tozudos y cabezotas los humanos de no explorarlo nunca. Creo que ese es el modelo que propone la terapia Gestalt. La historia es, a ver, cuánto narcisismo tengo, no hablo del tuyo, sino del mío, que lo que me encanta, o cuántos buenos deseos tengo, si lo que quiero, que me encantaría, es con la terapia Gestalt cambiar el mundo. Como ya he descubierto, porque soy vieja, que me tengo que, mi omnipotencia me la tengo que guardar, lo que he pensado es que posiblemente el mundo pueda cambiar en progresión. Soy mala para las matemáticas, no en progresión matemática, sino en progresión geométrica. Que si yo intento vivir lo que explico, o como en lo que creo que es la terapia Gestalt y la vida, va a haber una progresión geométrica. Puede que haya otro que lo viva y que lo entienda, o puede que haya dos, o que haya tres, y esos tres abran a otros. Por supuesto no lo veré, pero mi esperanza es que haya un momento en que los 90 segundos del fin del mundo vayan para atrás. Pero no sé si mi explicación te vale. Te diría una frase de Goodman: vive como tu corazón te diga que la vida se debe vivir y el mundo se volverá un sitio mejor para ti y para todos los que tienes alrededor.
Yo creo que me tocaba a mí. ¿Sí? Pues mi pregunta...
¿Podéis poneros de pie quien hable? Así sabemos dónde mirar. Después para ver el orden, después vas tú, después vas tú. ¿Es así?
Pues mi pregunta, no sé si es un poco catastrófica, pero da como saber vuestra opinión, sobre todo de Jordi, si pensamos que aún hay alguien al mando, ¿no? En la teoría clásica de ingeniería social, de manipulación, pues hay unas oligarquías, unas plutarquías que nos manipulan para sacar algún beneficio. Pero mi pregunta es si este monstruo que hemos creado de manipulación es tan potente y tan desregulador, pensándolo desde la Gestalt, que se ha comido un poco a la gente que lo ha creado, y es este monstruo como casi un virus que intenta sobrevivir incluso conquistando a estas élites que las que yo conozco y veo por la televisión ni las veo muy felices ni muy satisfechas.
Pues sí, hay efectivamente muchas élites que intentan explotar de muchas maneras, pero yo lo que me temo es que hay algo más allá. Hay una dinámica propia del sistema que está más allá de lo que deciden personas individuales y que incluso va en contra, que esas personas hacen acciones que van en contra de ellas mismas. Hay una dinámica inherente a este sistema que es como que se ha vuelto loco por sí mismo y nos va arrastrando a todos. Elon Musk, el fundador de Tesla, en una conferencia en el MIT hace unos 10 años, dijo que con la inteligencia artificial we are summoning the demon. Estamos convocando al demonio. Bueno, no son bromas. Y entonces, cuando a cabo de unos años le preguntaron, ¿y entonces tú por qué haces las cosas que haces? Dice, si no puedes luchar contra ello, pues únete a él, claro, únete al bando vencedor. Pero efectivamente hay algo de eso. Pero ya que estamos con el tema, y respecto a la compañera que hablaba de la necesidad de esperanza, por un lado, el dato que he dado de los expertos en inteligencia artificial no dicen el 50% que vaya a acabarse el mundo, sino que podría, que hay la posibilidad, que ya hay que ver, ¿no? Pero luego, por otra parte, pues cuando os hablaba de estos ejemplos del prodigio de las células, de nuestros cuerpos, etc., hay toda esta parte que, si hubiera tenido más tiempo, lo hubiera desarrollado más, que es el hecho de que yo siento, estoy convencido intelectualmente, pero también siento, que la vida sabe lo que hace. Que liga con lo que...
Schwarzenegger, de esta que un hijo vuelve a buscar a la madre porque tiene una guerra
¿Terminator?
Terminator. Porque estaba pensando en Blade Runner, digo, no, Blade Runner es más un asunto ético, efectivamente, Terminator. Yo estoy de acuerdo contigo. Si me quito de películas, yo estoy convencida que ha habido más civilizaciones que han desaparecido de la Tierra y que han quedado un puñado pequeñito que luego ha vuelto otra vez a desarrollar, a evolucionar, y supongo de una manera más sensata. Yo lo aplico todo con el ciclo de contacto y digo, creo que esos pocos no les quedaba más remedio que estar unidos, que ser solidarios, que ayudarse entre ellos. Esa también es mi esperanza. Yo ya me pongo muy positiva y digo, los que quedéis, a hacerlo un poco mejor. Yo soy mayor para beber en charcos, comer latas caducadas y todas estas cosas de las películas que ponen. Pero sí tengo mi esperanza puesta en los que sobreviváis. Hacerlo mejor, por favor.
Mi nombre es Lucía y a ver si hablando de cuerpo, este corazón latiendo fuerte, estas piernas temblando de pie me dejan decir lo que quiero expresar. Lo primero, agradeceros esta presentación que nos ubica, nos coloca en el presente, pero también, y hablando de Gestalt, ¿no?, ¿dónde ponemos el foco? ¿Qué es lo que ponemos en primer plano? Quiero también traer un poquito de esperanza y de casualidad que vengo de verde. Así que, bueno... Yo que vengo también del mundo académico, observo, ¿no?, esta pérdida de la credibilidad, ¿no?, dentro del ámbito académico, que me parece muy preocupante. Además, en este contexto en el que nuestro ministerio está revisando muchas terapias, ¿no?, con este programa contra las pseudociencias, soy arteterapeuta y si bien la Gestalt está, digamos, amenazada, la arteterapia aún más todavía porque todavía no cuenta con ningún tipo de regulación, ¿no? Y todo esto, sin embargo, yo lo vengo observando desde hace tiempo, mientras que a la vez estamos viendo un auge, por ejemplo, de otras disciplinas, como puede ser el yoga. Hace 20 años había una escuela o dos de yoga en todo Madrid, ahora hay una en cada esquina, en cada calle. El mindfulness, que, ¿no?, la Gestalt bebe mucho de la meditación, también ha conseguido o está consiguiendo esa evidencia que de alguna manera respalda. Otro dato que me parece interesante, en los estudios que se habían hecho en Pinterest, que es uno de los buscadores que más utilizan los jóvenes para buscar información, una de las búsquedas que ahora está en tendencia tiene que ver con la creatividad emocional, es decir, los jóvenes hoy en día están buscando esto, Y ya os cuento un detalle muy anecdótico y muy familiar. Mi hija...
An anecdote. My daughter, who is 12 years old, she's just started her high school, and whilst putting together her agenda for the week, I realized that she was setting a time aside to stretch her back because she was using her backpack, and she needed to find material on YouTube to straighten her back. That makes me think that there are many other things happening in parallel. People are in a search for spirituality. They're focusing on their bodies. I would like to know your take on that.
Pues te lo paso a ti.
Te oigo.
I hear you, and I don't really know what to say, because I believe that you are right. And yes, this has to do with the fact that there's always, and I'm not going to go to the movies, but in reality, a core of rebels that want to change. But let me tell you something evil, and I do apologize. I would have loved for your 12-year-old girl, instead of going to YouTube to see how she can stretch, that she had told you, Mom, I want to do some stretching because I want to have a super body or my shoulders hurt, instead of going to damn YouTube. Maybe this is my frustration because I'm a zero with technology. But I do agree, there are always possibilities to recall that we're human beings.
Cuando yo era joven estaba de...
When I was young, the title fashion it was very fashion. And today, if you don't have a title, which is official with all the seals and stamps, you're no one. When I was younger, we just wanted to have a title. But if there's just a comment, with just one of my patients wants to come and do therapy with me, the rest, I do not care. We're getting to the end. There are 2 more questions, and then these will be the last ones. Jordi, could you explain the 3 last points you were alluding to? Because you just went running over them. Well, cultivating presence, Gestalt, mindfulness, yoga, stretching, everything that we might do with the body. Reconstructing Gestalt in the sense that developing views of the human being, of the mind, of the body. These are not 2 separate things, but we can make a difference between them. Of the society, the purpose of our life. Visions that will be much more holistic, humane, focused on relations and less on what we can separate. And focusing on what gives a sense, what gives a meaning, what's dynamic. Focusing on the qualitative and not just quantitative. And I was saying, alluding to trying to be better people to help others to become better people. I have no recipes. It has to do with following your heart, with learning from people that has managed to do it. Poets, philosophers, wise men, saints, musicians, artists, whatever. So finding examples and trusting life. Trusting life is essential. Thank you. So, thank you, Carmen, Jordi. It's been a pleasure listening to you. My question goes in this last, the last of this last question. I was eager to listen to more about you, what you were saying. But Jordi, you talk about a world with a sense, with a meaning. What is the sense or the meaning that you can give to everything that's happening? Because in Gestalt we talk about organic self-regulation. We trust in that process, that even if there's a catastrophe, there's a regulation. But I'd like to know, what is it that you think of this second point? The world with a sense or with a meaning. Thank you. the meaning or the sense depends on each person. That's why we are unique people and irreparable. Viktor Frankl, with this book, The Man in Search of Sense or Meaning, he, instead of asking about the general sense of life, you have to ask a chess world champion, what's the best play? What's the best strategy? Well, it depends on the situation. And the meaning and the sense of your life depends on your situation. But it's true that in today's world, finding that sense is more difficult. And that sense is hidden. Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, says that hidden harmony is stronger than manifest harmony. And has always inspired me. And that sentence said by Heraclitus is also present in all spiritual traditions, that there's a background of sense, of goodness, light, sense, meaning behind everything, though we might not see it at some times. So let me explain a short anecdote. In summer 1989, I went to East Berlin and I saw that wall that still was there with the soldiers with their weapons and rifles ready to kill. 3 months after, that wall was torn down and no one was killed. That's the only major political event of the 20th century with no bloodshed. And there was no politician, no single expert in politics that had said, well, this wall is going to fall. No, it had been for decades there and it was going to continue forever. But no specialist, no politician, specialist saw it. There was a mind change and people went to tear down the wall and the soldiers did not shoot. And their captains just let them be also. So suddenly that changed. And this is an example of how difficult it is to foresee what's going to happen in life. A door closes, but another one opens. That's why I say trusting life, in that if you follow a tradition or a spiritual tradition, it will bring you that sense, that meaning. Just with Heraclitus, remember that hidden harmony is stronger than the harmony you can see, than the manifest harmony. So behind chaos, there's harmony. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Wow.